John Scott here with Jonathan Acosta. Bills falling 34-25 to the New York Giants in the first preseason game. Who cares? The results, frankly, don't matter. What you see on the field does to some extent. You do need to look at it through the proper lens. That's what we're going to try to do right here. Let's start off the top with James Cook, because I was shocked when I saw him in full uniform, helmet on, going through warmups. You're putting out video on social media. We're talking about it up in the press box. And you're starting to think, well, he's not going to play. This is the strangest situation. He hasn't practiced, and he went behind the scenes for the final 2 days at St. John Fisher University, and there he is in full uniform. He doesn't ultimately play, and Sean McDermott shedding some light on the latest twist and turn of the James White saga.
I think you calling it
James Cook, excuse me, James White.
James White in New England. You got it in the AFC East, yeah. Strange is the right way to sort of describe this whole situation, because how often do you see a guy, day one, full participation at camp, continues to participate for a few days, and then the second half of camp is when that contract hold-in happens. Okay, and then we get to the preseason game, but then here he is out here fully suited up in pads, in uniform, looking like he's going to play, going through pregame warmups. Eventually, game happens, not out there on the field in any capacity, on the sidelines, just watching with his sunglasses on, the beanie on and everything. Sean McDermott talking about in the postgame press conference, saying that he had a good conversation with this running back, that he was able to agree with him to warm up for this game, but that because of his contract situation, Cook wasn't willing to play in the game, which I thought was an interesting way of phrasing it, because then McDermott was asked a follow-up question, and he said, no, I wanted him to play in this game, but we had, again, a good conversation. Won't get too deep into it, but we were able to get him to warm up. Playing in the game just wasn't something that he was willing to do. And so sort of shedding, I think, valuable light on this situation, because really we're at a point now where going into next week, would you really be surprised if this contract hold-in ends and he's out there practicing, or would you really be surprised if this thing sort of continues and then we get to maybe joint practices in Chicago and Cook isn't out there in any capacity? Really, the way this whole situation has really evolved is not something I don't think that anyone could have predicted, or really that makes sense to a lot of people that cover the team, cover the NFL. So, like you said, just another strange twist in sort of this situation that's keeping us on our toes.
I think what it is showing me is there is a clear line between the football side of this and the business side of it, and that's what they have been maintaining.
Yeah.
James Cook says, hey, I don't want to get fined. I'm here to win a Super Bowl. I want to be here and show my teammates I'm committed. That's why he came to minicamp and fully participated. That's why that carried over for the beginning portions of training camp. That's why I think he's having conversations with Sean McDermott and willing to do a good gesture of, hey, you want me out there, I'll kind of meet you halfway here. I'll suit up, I'll be with the team, I'll get into my routine, but I don't want to put my body in harm's way in the midst of a contract negotiation. So to me, this is showing a clear divide here, and it's not a divide of contention here. He wants what he wants, but he is able to separate as best he can business from football.
Well, and it goes back to a point that we touched on when we were wrapping up at St. John Fisher, too, is the difference in the relationship that he has with Brandon Beane as opposed to Josh Allen and Sean McDermott, right? Sean McDermott is the coach of this team. He's not in charge of any sort of contract negotiations or anything. So the relationship that he's tasked with developing and keeping with a guy like James Cook is different than the one that from Brandon Beane, where Brandon Beane does have to have those difficult money sign talks with Cook. McDermott not in charge of that, so his task is really, hey, how much can we continue to get out of Cook? How fresh can we keep him? How much how involved can we keep him with this team as much as he's willing to do, as much as his agent is willing to do? And so I think the way that you put a good sort of halfway gesture, I think is a good way of looking at it, because that's exactly what warming up for a game but not playing in a game, I think, is exactly the definition of a halfway gesture.
I panic meter, if this is the top, this is the bottom, I'm still going to keep it maybe here for right now. If nothing changes this week and we're entering the third week of the preseason, I'm going to start going above 50% here, and someone's going to have to give. I mean, that's honestly what it's going to come down to. And with the Bills truly having all of the leverage, I don't foresee James Cook saying, I'm going to forfeit game checks, I'm going to forfeit being with my team and really turning this into a distraction. So then the Bills just have to hang tough, I think, at this point in time. Hopefully, for their sake, the dialogue continues and maybe they get something done here. But I'll maintain, I do not feel like James Cook's actions currently are altering the course of this whatsoever.
No, and we'll see. Maybe there was a significant point in maybe these negotiations when during this past week, Kyren Williams agreed to his extension, 3 years, $33 million with the Rams. And you felt maybe going into this when you would hear Cook or when you would see him on social media asking for the $15 million, I think most people would say maybe it was that more of that $10 to $12 million range that seemed pretty reasonable. And then here you have a guy like Kyren Williams that I think most people would put James Cook more in that category and not the Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey category at $11 million. So is it something, like you said, someone's going to have to budge? Based off of that contract, it looks like it's going to have to be Cook maybe coming down from that $15 million. But if he doesn't, where do the Bills come down maybe or go up in what they're willing to offer him as well?
All right, let's talk actual preseason football. No Josh Allen in this one. Right move, good move here. Also, not just because you want to protect the reigning NFL MVP, but there's legit backup quarterback competition going on between Mitch Trubisky and Mike White. That's where the White came in. Trubisky getting the start, playing the first half. White coming in outside the locker room, playing third quarter, most of the fourth quarter before Shane Buechele coming in. Trubisky, I thought, looked really good. I thought this was honestly the best I'd seen him, even if you take camp into account. White struggled to start, self-admittedly. He's like, man, I could not connect early. Then finds KJ Hamler for a chunk play touchdown, leads another touchdown drive, and we come out of the first preseason game, and I once again think this two-horse race continues to be neck and neck.
That's right, because at training camp, it sort of felt like Mike White sort of had maybe the stronger first half of it, Trubisky really strong the second half of it, and then continuing that here in this game, he talked in the locker room about just getting the opportunity to get these live game reps with the ones. He's come in blowouts, for example, last season, but he's generally when he comes in and the Bills are up 40-9 on someone, he's playing with the other backups on the team as well. So he doesn't really get a lot of these opportunities to be out there with Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown and Keon Coleman and Dawson Knox. You know what I mean? So to see him come out here and really command this offense and lead a really nice touchdown drive, and not just have that, but make also some athletic plays, like a nice throw to Josh Palmer after spinning out of pressure.
That was Josh Allen-esque.
Yes, very Josh. You can see the MVP maybe rubbing off a little bit on Trubisky, but Trubisky's always had that athleticism in sort of his arsenal. And then a deep bomb to a wide receiver who we might talk about later in Tyrell Shavers for the biggest play in terms of yards in this game. So I think you really like what you see from Trubisky, especially because I feel, at least for me, the times that I've seen him in the past, even last preseason, he didn't really inspire much. He didn't really give you something where you're like, I feel really confident in this guy as the QB2 for the Bills going forward. I think even if you take last season into consideration, this was his best preseason game over the past 2 seasons. And I think what makes it maybe extra motivating or extra inspiring if you're a Bills fan is that it comes on the heels of a strong second week of training camp. For Mike White, I think it was a 1-for-5 start in this game.
1 for 6.
1 for 6, exactly. Not entirely
for
great.
For 5 yards.
And it's something that he acknowledged, too, in the post-game locker room, like you touched on. So to be able to find KJ Hamler, it was a 4th down play, too, so I got to have it situation wide open in the end zone. Honestly, it would have been more impressive if he missed the throw, right? Finds Hamler. So we're sort of back to where we started on this thing, where we thought it was a close 2-horse race. Maybe at the start of Mike White's time in this game, you're like, oh, maybe it's Trubisky starting to pull away in this thing. White sort of salvages it. So we'll see maybe if they switch it up for going into the Chicago game. Does White maybe get the first team reps, Trubisky with the second team reps? Because I think that's a more fair way to sort of compare them, is how they play with the same guys around them.
And Mike White might get the start. I don't think they need to, and I'll be interested to see if Sean McDermott puts those starters back out onto the field for another preseason game. We'll wait and see on there. Other things on the offensive side, and you alluded to it, the wide receiver group outside of the guys at the top, which there's a handful of them that are injured. You don't have Khalil Shakir. You still don't have Curtis Samuel, another guy, though, that was in full uniform and warming up before the game here. So that's encouraging. But Tyrell Shavers continues to make a push here, and he was the training camp preseason darling a year ago. This script is no different, but he is carrying over a strong back portion of training camp up at St. John Fisher. Making 2 big plays here in this game in the preseason. Mitch Trubisky saying, hey, it is my job to continue to feed this guy because all he does is make plays. Confidence growing for Shavers. Confidence continuing to build and get stronger and stronger with the coaching staff and the quarterbacks. And now as I'm looking out into this, and I put it on social media, Tyrell Shavers is making this team, in my opinion. It's what happens with the other guys, like an Elijah Moore, who's kind of been absent the past week or two, not on the field, just the production on the field. Where does this all ultimately shake out over the rest of the preseason?
I think it's fascinating with Tyrell Shavers because for as good of camps as he's maybe had in the past, I think this was his strongest one. And then to not just do that, but to come out here on the field and continue that, because you have other guys who I think had strong camps, like a Zach Davidson, and here he is with one bad drop and then another one where maybe the defender got in a hand and got it out of his hands, but it was a catch that he would like to have in that situation as well. So that's a guy who had a good camp but didn't make the most of his opportunities in a game-like situation like this. Tyrell Shavers, opposite, has a great camp and then maybe even is more impressive in the game situation. Again today, a 58-yard touchdown that Trubisky said he thought when he threw it, it was a touchdown. He started celebrating and everything, was disappointed that Shavers didn't end up in the end zone. But sort of that big playability, and we've seen it from him. Shavers had a big play touchdown in the regular season last year on a pass from Trubisky. I think it was a little screen, I think, against the Jets that he ended up housing for like 68 yards. Shavers actually mentioned that today in the locker room, saying that what's the difference between this year and last year, saying I've actually made plays in games now. I think sort of referencing that Jets game, mentioning the plays that he's made here today. And to your point, when we started training camp, we sort of thought, all right, this top part of the Bills depth chart at wide receiver is pretty set. You have Khalil Shakir, you have Keon Coleman, Josh Palmer, pretty set. I think most of us thought Elijah Moore was pretty set in there too, Curtis Samuel. Now you have a guy like Tyrell Shavers who obviously has the trust and really love of his teammates and coaching staff. It starts to make it a question of, hey, Elijah Moore has been out here. He was banged up a little bit, but it's not like he's missed the whole camp. He's just not a guy who has flashed really in camp practices or in this game situation here. Curtis Samuel, a guy who hasn't been able to stay healthy last year into this year, has missed most, if not all, of training camp. Didn't play in this game here. Even among the injured guys that did warm up, just warmed up for just a little bit. So I think it's going to be a fascinating situation because the other thing that Tyrell Shavers provides for you is special teams. And that's something that Sean McDermott talked about post-game as well, that, hey, we can see another proof today of what he can do on the offensive side of the ball. It's going to be up to Shavers now showing us how many different phases of special teams he can provide, because the more you can do, the better chance you have of helping this team and of being on this team, because it's tough to keep niche players. Tyrell Shavers seemingly far from a niche player because he gets it done in the receiving game, both short, intermediate, long, and as a special teams contributor, like you said, a guy really making a push to make this 53-man roster.
A couple notes. Yes, I know Elijah Moore was open on one of the plays. Mitch Trubisky threw it to somebody else. So it's not like Moore is doing nothing and it's all his fault. I recognize that. I'm also fully aware, as is Jonathan, the contract situation with Curtis Samuel. It's not great, and we understand that, hey, you're gonna take a hit if you decide to move on from him. I'm just saying, never say never. This is a championship Super Bowl contending team. They're not going to keep someone on the roster just because of money and cut loose someone that they feel can help them right now. And I'll just add one little caveat. Laviska Shenault has been battling injury. Sean McDermott noting after the game they were very intentional with the reps they gave him. He returned a punt in this game. He's never returned a punt in the National Football League. He's a very good kick returner. If he's going to make this team, he has to do both, and then you wouldn't have Brandon Codrington. These are all just the little dynamics that you kind of put notes into as we round out the roster. So again, you know who's going to be the three at the wide receiver room. I think after that, I'll put Shavers in there more solidly than I would anybody else.
Well, and then on the Shenault thing, too, again, a guy who's experienced as a returner compared to maybe Codrington, who's only had 1 year of it. And again, to McDermott's point of it being hard to keep a niche player, all right, what can Shenault do in the return game, but also as a wide receiver, contributed today with a nice catch on a 2-point conversion as well. So these just little examples of what coaches like Sean McDermott talk about in their pre-practice press conferences and their post-game press conferences, that it's not just coach speak, it's really stuff that you see play out on the football field. And I think with Laviska Shenault, it's a perfect example of that.
Let's go to the defensive side of things. Joey Bosa, he looked good. And again, we take the preseason pledge. We don't get too high, we don't get too low. But even if you just look in this small sample size against the New York Giants, encouraging considering you haven't had a lot to hang your hat on with Bosa so far, considering he started off injured.
Yeah, and a funny moment even coming into the stadium today. Walks in and sort of is lost and looking for the Bills locker room. He's like, I don't know where I'm going. And then eventually finds his way in there. Certainly looked like he knew where he was going out on the football field, though. Sean McDermott said that he especially took note of Bosa in on a couple of run plays. I think they brought him here, though, for his ability to wreak havoc in the pass game and get sacks, because when you think about the Bills in recent seasons in terms of guys racking up the sack numbers, the most impressive guy in the last 2 or 3 years is Leonard Floyd, who was only here for 1 season, a late free agent signing, 10.5 sacks, but a lot of those in the first half of the season. So they need that consistent pass rusher. Obviously, they want that out of Greg Rousseau. That's why they paid him the big bucks. They want him to elevate into a guy who can not just be the great run defender that he is, but also elevate the production that he has in wreaking havoc in the pass game. But that's also why you bring in an experienced guy like Joey Bosa to do the same thing. Nice first glimpse here of him in the preseason game, especially because here's a guy that they're managing what he does before the regular season. They had a plan for him in the offseason. We didn't see a lot of him in sort of the voluntary stuff, even mandatory minicamp, but then training camp they start to ramp him up. So it'll be interesting to see when we talk about maybe what the plan is for like a Josh Allen, right? Like how many games, how many snaps is he going to play in the preseason? I think something similar can be said for Joey Bosa. Hey, we saw a glimpse of him today. How are they going to manage him here in the preseason going forward, especially based off what they saw of him today, but to also keep him healthy for once the regular season begins?
Young defensive lineman also added to this Bills front, and I was really interested to see what you were going to get out of TJ Sanders, Landon Jackson, and Deion Walker. They had moments, some better than others, each of them. Jackson Dart throws a great touchdown pass. Yeah, he beat Dane Jackson, but it was a heck of a throw.
Yeah.
TJ Sanders was right up in his grill as he was releasing the ball. Deion Walker bats a pass down at the line of scrimmage. Yeah, Landon Jackson got an offsides that negated an interception, but hey, I don't think, again, you're not going to get too high, you're not going to get too low, but to see the size, see him against other opposing offensive linemen, another good first step in preseason action to kind of get a feel for the potential of those 3 new additions.
It's going to sound a little bit generic, but I think in the first preseason game, especially when they're not like a top 10, top 15 pick from the first round, you just want to see, do they belong? Do they look like they belong out there on the football field? And you almost want them to, even if they don't stand out in a great way, don't stand out in a bad way. And I think you can say that about the 3 guys. I know, like you said, Landon Jackson had that offside that negated what would have been a really nice play for a fellow rookie in Jordan Hancock getting an interception in this game. But all of them belonged. No crazy penalties in terms of like a face mask or anything crazy like that. So can they continue to build off the solid training camps that I think all 3 of them have had? I think it might be tougher for Landon Jackson to really sort of make his name out here just because of the depth that the Bills have on the edge, especially when you take into account a guy like Michael Hoyt, who I thought was another guy who impressed in this game, saw flashes of him, and he's a guy that's going to be suspended once the regular season begins, so he's a guy who might be getting even more reps in the preseason than he normally would. But for the guys like TJ Sanders and Deion Walker, this is just the first step, and I think in a season where they're really going to be counted on, because you have Ed Oliver, you have Daquan Jones, you even have Dwayne Carter, but I think the Bills are really expecting TJ Sanders and Deion Walker to be contributors potentially in a significant way this upcoming season.
We'll keep working our way through the defense. I'll just note, it was wild to see Joe Andreessen go from what he was a year ago to now starting amongst all of the other first-team guys at middle linebacker and guiding them with Terrell Bernard still on the sidelines. Joe Andreessen's going to make this team. We don't really need to talk about it. I think he's solidified himself as this team's backup linebacker, because cornerback, we know with Max Harrison out, Tre'Davious White all but certainly will start opposite of Christian Benford. Behind that has been a talking point, and we saw Dorian Strong and Dane Jackson get the reps after the first team, and I'd say mixed results. Jackson gets beat, but I think he had a good fight down the sideline later in the game to get a pass breakup. Dorian Strong was kind of in a couple plays, good and bad, and then you didn't see Ingram until the end. So that's kind of where this is how you got to look through things. I almost believe they know what they have in Jamarcus Ingram.
Yeah.
So it's not as pertinent to them to throw him in that second unit when you don't know what you have yet in Dorian Strong. And I think you really want to, even though you have so much history with Dane Jackson, see where he fits as well, with Ingram being the safety net of those 3 fighting for the, I don't know, 1, maybe 2 spots.
Right, because I think safety net is a good word with Jamarcus Ingram. He's a nice player, versatile player for this team, but I think the Bills kind of know the ceiling that they have with him. So can Dorian Strong maybe provide a higher ceiling? Or Dane Jackson, like you said, the history they have with him, but with his sort of veteran knowledge of this defense, does that allow him to maybe go out there with more, whether it be command or more knowledge or just better comfort level and provide maybe just a little something extra to this defense compared to a Jamarcus Ingram. This might all be something that could be moot in a month and a half, right? If Maxwell Hairston comes back from injury and is the first-round pick that this team wants him to be and really takes this time that he's on the sideline and really learns from Tre'Davious White and Christian Benford, I think that's sort of the plan now that the Bills have for him. Okay, Tre'Davious White really seems like he's won the CB2 job. Can Maxwell Hairston come in and almost be like a Cole Bishop was last year? Hey, not in a starting role, but you're the top backup. You're going to be counted on to go in and make plays in given situations. Can that really be the case? Because I think that's certainly the highest ceiling for this team at that CB3 position, because I'm just not sure how much maybe juice you're going to get out of a Dane Jackson, a Jamarcus Ingram, even a Dorian Strong, who I like as a 6th-round pick. I think he has great size at the position. But again, as a rookie, it's going to be really hard for him to provide what this team is looking for.
It'll be interesting, and a big swing here will be, does Hairston start the season on IR?
Yeah.
Or is he ready to go? He was not using crutches. That's an improvement, but still has a knee brace on, and I don't think he's anywhere closer to returning than maybe he was prior. So if he's on IR, that opens up an extra roster spot. We'll just end on this. Tyler Bass out. The Bills did sign a kicker, but I had said don't be surprised because Sean McDermott uses the preseason as a dry run, a dress rehearsal for any and all scenarios. Ray Davis kicked 2 field goals, 2 for 3 in the return of the blue and red. He's the emergency kicker. Sure enough, they trot him out here for an extra point. It wasn't pretty, but it went through. Even Ray, to his credit, said, holy, you know what, I can't believe that it went in. But just a fun moment here. And Davis, I think, at least in dire straits, has shown, hey, I can get the job done.
No style points with field goals. Either going through the upright, sometimes doinking off the upright.
It's like a golf shot. Who cares?
If it goes in, it goes in. The points count. Extra point 1, field goal 3, that's it. Doesn't matter. To your point, I mean, it was wild to hear him talk about it in the locker room, because he said he had been sort of fighting to get any coaching staff to listen to him that he can kick, because he kicked in high school. He played soccer, but his 5 years of college, no one listened to him. Last year with the Bills, no one listened to him. And then finally in OTAs and this summer, the Bills finally heard him out and obviously giving him a chance. And, I mean, not for nothing, but he's made 3 out of the 4 kicks so far that he's attempted, and he's a perfect 1-for-1 in an actual game setting in the NFL. So is that something where you're going to feel super confident in him if he has to come in during an actual game, maybe a 21-20 game, having to make the extra point to tie it up in the 4th quarter? No, but again, you said a dry run. I think of it as a testing ground. The preseason is a perfect testing ground for these sort of ideas. And I think Ray Davis said it best, that ideally you have the confidence in Tyler Bass and he's healthy, that he can go out there and make all the kicks he needs to. But he said, in a certain situation, at least I showed McDermott that I can come in and kick a field goal, and I think that's a perfect way to encapsulate it.
You're a soccer guy. You going to make a run for an NFL job?
I mean, I have 2 left feet. I think at this point it's been a while since I've laced up the cleats, but let me go home and watch a couple of Lionel Messi videos, and we can chat about it again next week.
Well, and the last time you played soccer, you hurt yourself, right?
Yeah, I pulled my quad and I was limping for like a month and a half. So I think I'm hanging up my jersey and my cleats as my retirement from soccer.
We'll leave it up to Ray Davis, the running back, and currently with the James Cook situation, the Bills starting running back. Bills' next 2 preseason games are on the road, beginning with Chicago next Sunday night, prime time. Get the coffee for a second preseason game. With Jonathan Acosta, I'm John Scott for Channel 2 Sports.